Hi everyone. So this is the second video I mentioned that I would have up. These videos are going to be scheduled by week, and right now this should be the one that's coming probably week after whatever. So the second film I wanted to mention was another horror movie that I saw, The Lighthouse. This one, unlike with In Fabric, which I kind of saw not in theaters, this was one I did see in theaters. I saw it with a friend, with a deep personal friend of mine, Katie. And oh boy, this movie, the movie in question that I'm trying to talk about is The Lighthouse by director Robert Eggers, who this is his sophomore effort. His first film was a film called The Witch from a couple of years ago, which was a critical darling, and for my personal opinion, instantly became one of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite films of the decade, in fact. And with The Lighthouse, I was definitely looking forward to it because all the things he did with The Witch, from the exquisite period detail to the really dark atmosphere to the unsettling imagery to the performances to the way the characters spoke, it was just all these elements in a film that just kind of made me think, yeah, this isn't just what I want out of a good horror movie. This is what I want out of any kind of film of this period and setting. And just like, it was just wow. And of course, when The Lighthouse premiered at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, reviews for it were out of this world. Everyone who saw it was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. This is a masterpiece. And, you know, there is that kind of feeling of skepticism one gets where it's like, even if it's this feeling where I've been kind of getting lately, where even if it's from a director who did a movie I really like and people saying, oh, the film's a masterpiece, yada yada yada, sometimes that doesn't exactly equal out. Like, there are some films I've seen by directors I love that I just couldn't get on board with the hype for. For example, I'm a big fan of a director like, say, Guillermo del Toro, and when The Shape of Water was getting great reviews and it looked like something totally up my alley, I was fully on board to watch it and love it, but I just thought it was just kind of clunky and not really as good as any of his other films. But at the same time, I was genuinely excited for The Lighthouse just because of its pure strangeness and how it looked to be something that would be utterly up my alley, from the black and white visuals to the, like nautical dialogue to the lead performers, Pattinson and Defoe, to, to just the sheer strangeness that was being shown off in the previews. And after seeing it in a surprisingly packed crowd, that was something Katie and I did not anticipate. We were expecting it to be kind of empty, but when we got in there, we had to find seats in an awkward corner to the side, which thankfully we were still able to tell what was going on screen, but it was just kind of like we were like stuffed all the way here, like, okay, we're watching the movie. After actually watching The Lighthouse, I can say without a doubt, out of what films I've seen from this year, this is easily the best thing I've seen this year so far. This is a truly strange, funny, creepy, demented, wacky, incredibly stylish thing. It's even a bit hard to kind of put what sort of genre this is in, because, like, you see, it's like you see kind of the genres it's listed under as horror and thriller and such, but it's also it's also a, a rip-roaring sea adventure and a goddamn glorious comedy to boot. I'm not gonna lie, a good half of this movie, I was laughing my ass off to it because it has such a strange sense of humor. Before I get into what the what it's like my overall feelings on it are, I'm sorry. There's a lot to discuss on this one. What the film is about is that it takes place in the early 1900s, and it's about two lighthouse keepers, Thomas Wake and Ephraim Winslow, played by Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, who are in charge of a lighthouse for the next couple of weeks, and they're basically there to kind of keep shop on it, make sure everything's running tight and yada yada yada. But strange events start to happen that begin to deteriorate their sanity, and after a certain point, the movie just becomes this, like this strange, almost kind of demented buddy comedy / horror movie as things just get crazier and crazier for the two of them. And as I was watching this, after a certain point, I felt like I was going just as crazy as the main characters were, because the movie just keeps bubbling and boiling, and you're just seeing such strange things getting thrown at the screen. Like, the characters frequently suffer, I would say at least kind of more from Pattinson's character, Winslow. He's actually kind of suffering more hallucinations than Dafoe's character does. But even Dafoe's character, Wake, he's even kind of a bit of a bonkers madman himself. Like, Winslow speaks like, a normal person would, but Wake, on the other hand, speaks like a old-timey, like a sea captain kind of thing. Like, he's practically almost kind of like Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, except if he was an actual film character, and 100 times more crazier than Mr. Krabs is. In fact, I've heard people describe this movie as almost kind of being like a live-action adaptation of that one SpongeBob episode. They either say it's like the Graveyard Shift episode, or it's that one episode where they accidentally killed the health inspector. Either description is valid, because it just keeps bouncing between this tone of being utterly hilarious and completely dark and demented at the same time, but it never feels out of place. It feels absolutely consistent, thanks in part to not only director Robert Eggers' ability to juggle tone, but also just from the really sharp script he's written with his brother Max Eggers, and the gorgeous production design, the visuals. They all shot this in black and white 35mm in this exceptionally boxy aspect ratio. It's not like in like regular widescreen or in that flat 185 aspect ratio. Instead, they shot it almost like way back, what early films were, in this boxy 119 kind of thing, to give you this feeling not only of like this is a movie from that period of time, like it's way back in that old time, but it's also like you're just as trapped and claustrophobic as the main characters are, and it works so well. And the performances from the two leads are top to bottom fantastic. Right now, from what I understand, the company that put the film out, A24, they're planning on doing an Oscar campaign for Willem Dafoe as Thomas Wake, which I would absolutely be on board for, because he's incredible in the movie. There's this amazing monologue he goes on where he curses Winslow, and it's for an exceptionally petty reason. Like, it's just one of those, like, really, it's like when you kind of think back on it, it's like, really? He said all of that just because Winslow said something that he didn't like? What a baby. But when, like in the moment when you hear it, it's like one of those like truly earth-shattering monologues. Like he's just like, hark! Poseidon and Protitus, and that your soul will be sucked into the sea until it is no more. And sorry. It's just, it really feels like the entire, like, earth is just crumbling around you, and, like, this monologue just truly feels like something like you're just like, whoa, holy crap, he's selling the hell out of it. Meanwhile, Pattinson, his performance, as good as Dafoe is, like, that doesn't mean Pattinson's no slouch out either. He's also a character who's equally going just as mad as Dafoe's character, but even more so because he starts experiencing worse hallucinations. One of the biggest ones is that he constantly keeps seeing visions of this mermaid that keeps appearing on shore in his dreams or in the water. And whenever he sees the mermaid, whenever it tries to speak to him, it doesn't even sound like it's speaking any kind of dialogue. Instead, it's just making this shrill scream that sounds like a seagull being filtered through an incredibly staticky TV. I know that sounds strange. It's just as weird as you think it sounds. And on top of that, another thing about these characters is that they're also a couple of horny bastards. I would say more Pattinson's character than Defoe, because Pattinson's character finds this little mermaid figurine that's topless, and you can make a fun drinking game out of how many times you see him masturbating to that figurine. There's even a scene where Katie, she pointed this out to me, but, you know, like an example of how the characters' madness is starting to set in is that when one of the scenes where we see Pattinson masturbating, he's actually masturbating in rhythm to all the clocks and gears of the lighthouse itself. And that's just kind of one of those, like, okay, that's a strange detail, but okay, I'll run with it. Also, Willem Dafoe farts a lot in the movie. It's actually like there's even a scene where Pattinson just gets so fed up with everything that he just screams about, "I'm getting sick of your, Captain Ahab bullshit. You're not the president. You're not my father. You're not my boss. And you fucking farts. I'm getting so sick of it." And it's like, I'm sorry if it seems like I'm rambling, but once you see this movie, you will understand why I'm rambling, because it does turn you into a bit of a rambling maniac after it's over. There are also so many other things I can talk about the movie, but after a certain point, I'm just going to start rambling about it. It completely discombobulated my brain in the best way possible. I cannot wait to see this again, and when it hits video. And from what I understand, Eggers also has another film he wants to do that's kind of similar in this vein, called The Northman, which is going to be a Viking vengeance epic. And if Eggers continues this niche he has of doing historically accurate pieces, he's really onto something here. It's funny in a year where a bunch of, first-time big horror directors, guys like Jordan Peele and Ari Aster, get their follow-ups out of the gate. Jordan Peele with Us after he hit it big with Get Out, or what Ari Aster did with Midsommar after how well Hereditary was received. Eggers kind of comes flying out of the gate with a movie that makes their follow-ups, as good as those movies are, kind of look like second fiddle by comparison. And I say this as somebody who likes all three of those movies, but The Lighthouse is not only the best of those three movies, but it's the best thing I've seen this year. It's going to take a lot to top something like this, and who knows? There's a strong chance this is going to be number one on my list. Anyway, sorry so much for rambling. I hope all of you have a good evening, and stay tuned for the third video. See ya.